Let's go, boys! I'm Seiben, it's spoiler season, Hour of Devastation hype, best cards ever printed, top YouTube algorithm, everything you need. We got lions, angels, gods dying, gods living, you name it. Squad up and join the hub crew. Spoilers, let's do it. Whew, man, I have no idea how streamers and other YouTubers keep that up. Shit. Sorry for that, guys. Just trying out a new hype feel for the channel. Was Hype Seiben too much? It was probably too much. Dang it. Anyway, we do have some sweet spoilers for Hour of Devastation today. A lot of interesting cards that I'm fairly excited for, so let's get started. First, we have Accursed Horde, a 3/3 zombie for 3 generic and 1 black. Pay 1 generic and a black, target attacking zombie gains indestructible until end of turn. This was one of the first spoilers that really caught my attention from Hour of Devastation. Not that it's super OP or anything, but because it's a nice balanced uncommon, which I get excited for, especially in Limited. Zombie Tribal is a real thing in Limited right now, and this card's a great addition to it, giving itself and any other zombie, assuming you have the mana, indestructible as you attack. 2 mana isn't a steep price for this effect, which saves your creatures from annoying combat tricks and bad trades, but of course it only works on the offensive, so it really pushes a more aggressive deck. There's also strong zombie decks flying around Standard right now, where this card may or may not find a slot in. It's nice, but I'm not sure how important being indestructible is for that deck. Regardless, I'm sure people will test it out. Next, we got ourselves a lion, well, a cat. Pride Sovereign, 2/2 for 2 generic and 1 green. Pride Sovereign gets +1/+1 for each cat you control. Pay 1 white, tap and exert Pride Sovereign, create 2 1/1 white cat tokens with lifelink. So this is the card cat tribal decks really needed. In the colors, it will of course run. Will it be good enough for Standard? No clue, but it certainly adds to it possibly being a breakout deck in Hour of Devastation, that's for sure. How do I personally like the card? Well, I like it a lot. In Limited, it's basically a gold card, meaning you should be running green-white. If you don't, this is generally just a 2/2 for 3, which is bad. You go those colors though, this kitty will be a token generating bomb that will only get bigger and bigger as the game goes on. Think about it, when Summoning Sickness wears off, this guy's a 4/4 who created 2 1/1s with lifelink. That's great value on a 3 mana card. Of course, you get the downside of it being exerted, which kinda sucks, but still, I basically see it as a kitty cat generator, and as that, it's pretty strong. That being said, I don't want to overhype this card, which is apparently the job of YouTubers and MTG. It basically averages out to making 1 token every turn. They're just 1/1s, so you could find yourself in a position where you're getting overrun and your cats are just dropping faster than you can produce them, with the exert really making it slow. Still, it's a pretty high pick for me if I run these colors, and it could be the ingredient needed to make Cat Tribal a thing in Standard. Moving on, we have Angel of the God-Pharaoh, 4/4 Angel for 4 generic and double white. Of course, it also has flying and cycling for 2 generic. This card confuses me. Why is it uncommon when just last set we had Winged Shepherd at common, a card I actually think is better than Angel of the God-Pharaoh? They cost the same, but you lose 1/1 in stats for vigilance and a solid 1 white cycling cost. I guess you can argue that generic cycling cost means that you can add this to some cycling synergy deck in Limited, but still, not much of an upside. Plus, it costs double white, which means you need to run it in a white focused deck if you hope to play it regularly, unlike Winged Shepherd, which you could theoretically splash for if you needed to. Anyway, the only interesting thing about this card is its flavor text. Vorthos saving the day again. The angels did not deceive. From the start, they were clear their allegiance was to the God-Pharaoh and to him alone. Makes you think, did Bolas create these angels, or are they simply under the same spell as the gods, just theirs didn't break? Interesting lore question to ask headed into Hour of Devastation. Next, we have a candidate for my favorite Aftermath card of all time, Grind to Dust. Mainly because I love saying grind to dust, but also because it's a great card. Grind is a sorcery for 1 generic and 1 black, put 2 -1/-1 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures. And being played from your graveyard again at sorcery speed is Dust for 3 generic and 1 white. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them. Right off the bat, this is a limited all-star. It's just a cheaper sorcery version of Splendid Agony, which is a very decent removal. So from that alone, this is great, not to mention the numerous synergistic cards this could go with in the whole -1 counter spectrum. Dust is also amazing, potentially mass exile for 4 mana played out of the graveyard. Even if it just hit 2 creatures, that's still value. Of course, it only gets better the more -1 counter payoffs you use, and note, it doesn't hit everything with a negative counter on it, so stuff like your Channeler Initiate are safe. So great for limited, but what about standard? Well, yet again, Hour of Devastation seems to push the color identity of what we previously had in Amonkhet for certain mechanics. -1 counters was squarely green-black, but with Dust being such an amazing payoff, Hapetra decks really want to include some measure of white. Not to mention, this is amazing with the new Scorpion God. But again, that's 3 colors, with 2 not currently present in Hapetra decks. -1 counters right now are having what I feel is an identity crisis. Regardless, it's still a limited bomb. Hey, do you like spells that deal direct damage only to your opponent's face? Neither do I, so I'm sad to report on Inferno Jet, sorcery for 5 generic and a red. Deal 6 damage to target opponent, cycling for 2 generic. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I would have been way more excited for this card if it said creature or player, but this is what we got, a buffed up lava axe. So I don't see this making it anywhere in standard, it must be a limited card, and in that it's kinda decent? Obviously it's not the best card cause it's not removal, but it does have a relatively cheap cycling cost which could be good in some decks. It does something early in cycling, and later on you can top deck it for a win. Not the best, certainly, especially at sorcery speed, but not strictly the worst I've seen either. There are a lot of cycling payoffs out there in Limited. Having this do something at both stages of the game is pretty okay. Amonkhet gives us even more pyramids with Sunset Pyramid. 2 mana artifact that enters the battlefield with 3 brick counters on it. Pay 2 generic and tap the pyramid, remove a brick counter and draw a card. Or pay 2 generic, tap the pyramid, and scry 1. So this is a pretty nifty uncommon that I think a lot of people are gonna underestimate. No chance in standard, but in limited it could be a sleeper. It's a pretty early way to get some card advantage on your opponent, especially in an environment dominated by aggro decks. It could be the perfect addition to those that run out of steam quickly, or those looking for some extra answers. Of course, once you draw 3 cards, it's just a pretty pathetic scry engine, but hey, at least it does something while just sitting out there. This set never leaves you flooded in the late game. I love it. Of course, it would have been so much better if by using the scry ability, it also added a brick counter, but then it would probably be at rare. Still, I think it's pretty decent. Not super powerful, but it may just do enough. Next, we have a new sweeper in Hour of Revelation, the revelation being how awesome this is for EDH. It's a sorcery for 3 generic and triple white that destroys all non-land permanents. Hour of Revelation costs 3 less to cast if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield. See ya, Planar Cleansing, nice knowing ya, but you have been utterly replaced. Hour of Revelations is just a strictly better version. Still, let's judge it on its own merits. It's a powerful board wipe that could possibly cost 3 mana if you're being overrun. That's really good. But the triple white cost makes it tricky to play, at least for standard and limited. That being said, even with my limited knowledge of EDH, I know this thing's gonna be bonkers in that format. Seriously, it'll basically be 3 mana for a sweeper almost all the time, which is just a huge momentum swing in your favor. I wouldn't mind drafting it either should I find myself in a heavy white build, but its fate in limited and standard is still up in the air for me. White just has so many other forms of removal that this thing may just be more trouble than it's worth. Now we take a look at the next of the God's last cycle, Oketras Last Mercy. Sorcery for 1 generic and double white, your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. So just like Bantu's Last Reckoning, this is a super powerful card at a staggering low cost with the effect causing your lands not to untap. The balance being that it costs more than you think to play these cheap spells. Obviously that's a huge downside, and while I see Bantu's Last Reckoning as a card that could warrant such an effect, I'm not so certain about Oketras Last Mercy. I never value life gain very highly, even if it's as much as 19. It's just not a priority to me compared to board presence, for example. I do think this is a wonderful sideboard addition for decks looking to edge out aggro opponents, but mainboard, probably not. In Limited, it's an even tougher choice because it could be a really big swing, but that downside though. My thing is that it doesn't do anything to the board state. It doesn't put you ahead, it just lets you live longer. And it's only ever really valuable in the late game, unless you're being completely overrun. It's a card I certainly had to come back to reevaluate, but let me know what you guys think. Also, this cycle of God's Last cards is really depressing. It seems like the gods of Amonkhet don't have a good fate ahead of them. To the end, all Oketra did was for others. Oh, right in the feels. Next, we take our first look at the Beetle God. Not its actual card, but one it's depicted in. Supreme Will, instant for 2 generic and 1 blue. Choose one. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, or look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. So, a more expensive version of Mana Leak and Impulse, but with that added mana going towards the convenience of having both options on the same card. Supreme Will is pretty amazing to me, both for Standard and Limited, even though I value counter spells less in Limited than I do in Standard. The reason I like it more than, say, Cancel is because of that added option. Most of the time, if you run Cancel in Limited, you can sit with it in your hand all game and not find a single good chance to use it. This card takes that negative and gives you another out. It's a counterspell when you need it, but if it's obviously a dead card, just use the impulse effect and get something useful out of it. It's like a better cycle basically, which on a counterspell is really nice. Standard's also gonna have some fun with this card, I believe. Control decks love Mana Leak and options, and this is both. And the final card we look at today will be Mirage Mirror, the most OP mirror in Magic the Gathering. A 3 generic mana artifact that when you pay 2 generic mana, becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. Whew, that's a lot of stuff it can become. Now, Mirage Mirror is a weird one for me, again because it has so much potential in older formats in EDH, but I'm kinda lost for it in Standard and Limited. In Limited, this card's worth is dependent on what you or your opponent has. It kinda takes the worth of the card and leaves up to chance, but being generic cost means it can fit anywhere, so it's definitely a card I consider taking. Standard, I like how it can become Heart of Karen and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Not to mention, it can become creatures you've played, but without summoning sickness, and it can be used as a combat trick to block and trade with whatever your opponent has. I love this design because the price of the card and its abilities are just low enough to make it interesting without it being completely broken. I don't have a final say on it, but I will say lots of experimenting is going to be done here, certainly. You want me to use that fake annoying hype voice again? Really? I don't want... Oh, hey guys! Hope you enjoyed the spoilers, best cards, so OP, best set, am I right? Anyway, don't forget to join the crew, become a hubby today. Sub, buy our stuff, like the video, become a hubby. That's all I can say. God, I feel dead inside. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Aether Hub here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, support the channel and all our creators by liking, sharing, and of course subscribing so you never miss our latest video. You yourself can become an honorary hub member by visiting our store at www.aetherhubtcg.com. We have a special pre-order event happening right now where you can snag some of the best deals on packs available. Afterwards, consider visiting our friends over at 5 Color Combo. They have an amazing free app that I use to practice my limited picking skills along with custom art playmats and tokens. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, never be afraid to feed your obsession. I'll see you guys next time.